You're welcome to the Data Management and Legal Analytics course. And before we start, I would like to give you a brief introduction. My name is Ali Afegbua. I'm the lead consultant at Nubianette Consulting. So we put together this course because of the importance of proper ethical data management in law firms. And basically what we do at Nubianette, we provide services in business development, in marketing, and also we've organized training similar to this on how law firms can automate their services and also provide better services to clients using up-to-date technology and more access to data, seamless and easy processing of data in law firms. Some might argue that it is important for us to have this as part of our legal education, but unfortunately, we haven't gotten to that stage yet. So today, the course will touch on the various ways we can adapt and start applying some of these solutions in our practices. So before I go in on the schedule for today, I would like to ask everyone to look out for polls that will be coming up. So there'll be a few polls coming up in the course of the class. And also I will share the schedule in the chat box if you haven't gone through the schedule before to have a proper guidance on how we'll be flowing today. So I'd like to introduce the first speaker, Mr. Theo Medeiros. Theo is an analytics leader with vast experience in corporate strategy. He also helps organizations deliver on strategy and execution by building and leading comprehensive data-driven, fact-based, advanced analytics deliverables. He also founded the Information and Data Analytics Foundation, IDAF, to create AI-powered communities in Africa. I will provide more information about his organization and what they achieve or what they've achieved and how you can also access some of the resources there as well. I'll be handing over to Mr. Theo now, and I'll also make further introductions. Today's session will involves 3 speakers. So tomorrow also we'll be having 3 other speakers speaking on various issues in data management and also legal management. So I would like to hand over to Mr. Theo Medeiros. Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ali, for that introduction. Thank you for everyone, the attendees. It's lovely to have you here. So how's everyone doing today?
Fine.
Good, good. So during the course of the presentation, if you have questions, please feel free to get your questions into the chat window, and Ali will take care of the questions from there, if in case you have any questions at all. So Ali, can you please present the slide?
Okay.
All right, yeah, thank you, Ali. So today, like Ali said, we're going to be talking about data management and legal analytics. All this we'll be talking about will be through the lens of the legal practice, the legal industry, how analytics is being applied, is being used in the legal industry, and the applications of analytics in the legal industry. And in addition to that, we'll also be touching up on the data management of just basically how you manage data in the analytics space. So next slide, please. So this is just a little bio of me. Like Ali said earlier, as you were looking at my name, you'll probably be thinking, is this guy a Nigerian? Yes, I'm a Nigerian, and I'm from Lagos. And I'm proud to be a Nigerian too. So I'm into the analytics space. I do digital strategy, AI implementation, AI strategy. I help major organizations here in the US to implement their digital strategy, integrate analytics, automation into their solutions. I also founded an organization in Nigeria. We have an office in Lagos. And our organization is responsible for empowering AI communities in Nigeria and in Africa. So I have a bachelor's degree in computer engineering, strategic management from Harvard, and business analytics from NYU Stern. So these are my areas of specialties where I'm focused on right now. You see patent analytics, you see artificial intelligence, revenue and pricing optimization, and natural language processing. For patent analytics, before I go into today's conversation, that's what I currently do now. That's what my major focus is on, where we use a lot of analytics, advanced analytics, to do research in patent cases. So what we do in the company is we, instead of, normally when you see trademark infringement or patent infringement, instead of going to the courtroom to settle those cases, we actually settle the cases in the boardroom. And we have lawyers who are licensed lawyers. We have analysts who are engineers who use the tools that we built, for their research, to be able to discover infringements in patents and things like that. So it's heavily being used. And then natural language processing, which I'm going to be touching up a little bit on, and how, if you have a law firm, and how you can take advantage of natural language processing to be able to make your work more efficient. So let's go to the next slide, please. So what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be looking at types of analytics, and then we're going to be looking at analytics for law firms. And then we're going to be looking at management of legal data. And the management of legal data, I'm going to be touching up on the application of analytics. And then lastly, I will take your questions. So while Ali is moving to advance the slide to the next slide. So Ali, next slide, please. So before we go into analytics proper, it will be good for me to explain to you the different types of analytics that we have out there. If you've been hearing analytics, analytics itself is just a systemic analytics, analysis of data, to gain insight, to do a lot of things with it. So there are various types of analytics. The first one is descriptive analytics. For descriptive analytics, it's similar to what you currently know in high school, where you'll be trying to see what happened in any data set you have. So for example, if you want to know, what was my sales last month? What was my profit last month? So it's data that is sitting in a database, you just pull the data, and then usually you will see it represented in bar chart or pie chart. That's the common use of descriptive analytics. It's just to answer what happened. And then there's diagnostic analytics. So if, for example, something goes wrong, maybe a car just suddenly loses control. And then the manufacturer is trying to figure out, what happened, why did they lose control, So the diagnostic part answers why, while the descriptive part answers what happened. So you see that, so they you see another use case of that in where you collect logs, whether in manufacturing industry, you collect a lot of logs, data, to go back if something happens, and then trying to figure out, why did it happen, or why was there a failure? And then there's predictive analytics. Predictive analytics is trying to predict, the probability of something happening in the future. So, for example, if you have seen when you go to apply for a loan, and they will probably, approve you of the loan, you provide some data information about yourself. They ask you a lot of questions, where do you work, how much do you make, and things like that, what kind of collateral do you have. So they compare that against, historical data in the past, and people that they have granted loans in the past, people that have defaulted on the loans, people that did not default on the loans, right? So they use that data that you provide, to predict whether you are going to default or not. And that is predictive analytics, Another use case of predictive analytics is if you look at the telecoms company, and they try to predict who is likely to leave MTN or who is likely to leave Glo and go to the other competitor. So that's a predictive analytics, trying to predict behaviors and then be able to determine, there's highly likelihood that this person is going to leave us. And then managers tend to, take action before that incident occurs. Then there's prescriptive analytics. So prescriptive analysis, what should I do? What should I do? So if you've gone to Amazon, if you use Amazon and Amazon is recommending products to you, and it's saying, the people who purchase this also purchase that, or they're trying to tell you, what you should try and purchase, based on historical purchases and things like that. So that is prescriptive analytics, and that normally happens automatically. Amazon is not there. They deploy the solution, and it just happens automatically on your website. When you go there, it just recommends products to you. And then there's another one, the last one, which is really common now, is the cognitive aspect of it, and that is just basically what I recommended, actions based on natural language or self-learning. And you'll see that a lot in law firms, here, and hopefully, and that's the essence of having this course, so that we can provide information on what you should be doing, what other big law firms are doing with cognitive artificial intelligence. Being able to take advantage of the files and the documents that you have, to be able to extract insight, extract wisdom, from the data that you have. And a lot of law firms do have data that they could be using natural language processing on, but they're not really using it. So one application of natural language processing is when you speak into your iPhone, you say, Siri, what will the weather be like tomorrow? Or what does the weather look like today? Right? Or Siri, play me Concrete Jungle from Bob Marley. And Siri just plays that music for you. So that is an application of natural language processing. So when you speak into Siri, Siri extracts that audio voice and then transcribes it into text. And once it transcribes into text, and it uses the text, and it uses that to query what the result it will give to you. So next step, please. The next slide. So before I go into this slide, let me quickly touch up on something for you guys. So in the legal industry, if you want to use data for smarter legal services. So let's say a client comes to you now and say, how much is my case worth? You know, and you as a lawyer, how do you know to answer that? You probably will answer that, you know, based on your experience in the past, you know, based on what you think it should be. And most of the time, your experience in the past may be good, but it may not be sufficient, you know, to provide, you know, more informed response to your client, right? And then you have another question maybe like, you know, what are their chances of winning custody? You may have two parents, you know, fighting for custody, you know, and one that maybe your client may be asking, you know, what is my chance of winning custody? So all these examples I'm providing are examples that you can actually use analytics to solve, you know. Another question may be, you know, how much legal exposure does my company have? And then you'll be like, oh, can I use data analytics to answer that? Yes, you can. Another question may be, how much they should offer to sell to the litigation. Now, and this is very important, right? So if you are working on a litigation case and your client is asking you how much should you offer to should they offer to settle the litigation, and if you don't know the right amount, maybe you just guessing or maybe using other frameworks, you know, to arrive at that amount, right? If you undercut yourself, then you're losing money for your client, and then you're also losing money for yourself. You know, if your billable strategy is to get percentage of that cut, right? So another question maybe, you know, should they accept a plea deal? You know, how can you use data analytics to solve that? You know, you can use data analytics to solve that depending on various factors, depending on various variables. Who is the judge? You know, who is the prosecutor? And things like that, you know, based on historical cases, past cases in the past, you know, how did this judge, you know, rule, you know? So data can help you with that. Another thing in contract law, you know, where it's a certain provision standard in contract. How do you do that? So most of the time, you know, we provide, if, for example, in the case where we're asking, how much is my case worth? Most of the time we're providing that based on just number. But the answer should actually be distribution of outcomes in similar cases. You take another case for an example I gave earlier about how much should they offer? Maybe, you know, you're trying to settle a litigation, and then how much should they offer? You know, again, that answer should not just be a number. You know, you just guess, you know, you don't want to be doing just hunch guessing, be just guessing based on your own intuition. You know, that answer can be, you know, a decision made probabilistically with information about past settlements, cost to try the case, and the likelihood of a successful outcome. So when I say likelihood of a successful outcome, if you look at an example where you go and perform a test, they're trying to decide, you know, who is the father of a child. And you hear something like, you know, 99.99%, you know, we ascertain that the result ascertains that, you know, Mr. A is the father. All that is using analytics, you know, that is probability. So when we say likelihood of a successful outcome, and that can be based on maybe 95% chance, right? So now, I decided to put this case out there. And one of the main objectives of this course is to persuade you guys to using analytics. And if you're not using analytics, you might be doing yourself a disadvantage. So this is a report from a Legal Executive Institute in the US, where they did a lot of survey. And on the left here, you see roughly about 175 people, lawyers. So the chart on the left has to do with um, uh, um, uh, big law firms that have average of 150 or 170 or 180 lawyers. And then the one on the right, small firms, maybe about average of 20, 30, or 35 lawyers. And what they found out was that even those big firms with a lot of lawyers that are not using data, they bring in a revenue about $95 billion per year, in that industry, right? And then the small firms that are using data, this is not just one law firm now, but an aggregate of law firms that have an average of 25, 30 employees. They are bringing in over $100 billion a year. And what is the difference? These smaller law firms are using data, so they don't need a lot of resources to get the work done, right? So they're using data to do most of the work, and they are more efficient. Next slide, please. So now, we're talking about analytics for law firms. As I've explained earlier, so you'll hear something about big data. But most of the time in law firms, in law organizations, you can actually extract big insight from small data. You don't necessarily have to wait until you have big data. And it could just be, the forms you're filling. It could just be doing a digital marketing campaign. It could just be gathering data from documenting, when you generate a lead, when you acquire a new customer, where did the customer come from? Did they come from the website? Did they come from referral? So you start gathering those data. So that is not enormous amount of data. With small data, if you do the right thing, you can generate big insights, from that data. So if we go to data-driven legal marketing, next slide, please. Yeah, go to the next slide. The next one. Go back one more slide. Yeah. So no, the next one to the right. Yeah, this one here. So this is data-driven legal marketing, right? So the column on the left, without data, what can be happening, right? So let's say you want to generate lead, customer acquisition, and you are doing that without data. So you can think of advertisement, whether it's a television advertisement or radio and things like that. So one disadvantage of that is that it may be over-inclusive, meaning that you are targeting people that probably most of the time law-abiding citizens, they can never be your client. There's no way they will become clients. So when you do that, you are wasting money trying to reach more people than necessary. That's one. So, and the other one is under-inclusive advertising. With the under-inclusive advertising, you are not reaching the right people that you're supposed to reach. Meaning, so if you have people in different geographies, maybe in different neighborhoods, different cities, but you're just spending money and then you are not reaching the right amount of people you are supposed to reach. So, but with data, you can actually, reach the right amount of people, that you're supposed to reach. So when you use digital marketing, so you do the right marketing campaign, based on your customer data, your client data that you have, you can mine that data. When I say mine, just trying to do some discovery inside the data to segment different clients into group them into different clusters. So when you have a targeted digital campaign, you have a high probability of getting your client, acquiring your client, because that, okay, maybe in VGC, for example, or in a particular neighborhood in Lagos, you can say, okay, this location if I target this location, I will get more clients. How do you know that? And that's just basically based on data that you have in the past. That is just sitting there in your Excel spreadsheet on your database and you're not really using. So based on that data, you can discover insight and say, okay, people in Surulere are not going to be my likely clients. So I don't need to waste money targeting that area. So I can spend money targeting Victoria Land, Ikoyi, and whatnot. Now, most law firms that are not using data, they're not able to determine which clients are most profitable. So when you're doing client acquisition, the ability to also know which clients are profitable will be at an advantage to you. Again, you can use analytics to do that. And one way to do that is to link the revenues you are getting and the expenses for different clients. You link the revenues and the expenses for different practice areas in your law firm. And then you also link the revenue and expenses for different lawyers. So you'll be able to discover insights on who are your most profitable clients. The first step is trying to know, which area you should target, and within that area, now you're zoning in and trying to determine which of these people are my most profitable clients. And then the last one is you cannot figure out which channels lead to engagement letter. So when you advertise, whether through a particular channel, right? It may be radio, it may be TV, it may be newspaper, it may be on your website, it may be on Google advertisement. Without data, you cannot link, where the source comes from all the way to engagement letter. But with data, you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to track profit and revenue all the way to, lead sources. So you link your advertisement channel to your engagement letter. So I think, Ali, we can have the first poll now. Probably within, it shouldn't take long, maybe about 15 seconds, they should be done. Can you hear me, Ali?
Oh, yes, I'm with you.
Can you put on the first poll? So while they're working on the next one, you can advance to the next slide, Ali. I think they should be finishing by now. So let's go to the next slide, please. All right, I think everyone should be done with the poll now, right?
Yes, everyone should be done with the poll, I believe. So if you don't answer, please take the time. Please.
Yes, it was just one question. We're done. I'm done.
Good.
Okay.
So another aspect of when you look at analytics for a law firm is using data to provide high quality assistance. You see a lot of lawyers, a lot of law firms, they have a lot of files and paper forms. And I think when I was looking into this training, I contacted a colleague of mine who owns a law firm in Abuja, and he introduced me to, what's the name of that website, Ali?
Is it Law Pavilion?
Yeah, Law Pavilion. He introduced me to Law Pavilion. What Law Pavilion is doing is really good, you know. But there's much more that can be done than what Law Pavilion is doing. So you have ineffective use of data. You have your files and paper forms. Instead of printing up file or writing reports, on paper with your pen, you could be doing that, in a system on your system, that way you are capturing the data, and storing them right away. So you look at when you have those paper hard copy files and forms, and you store them in file cabinet, that's a lot of asset for you. That means that is gold for you. But a lot of lawyers don't even know that they can be taking advantage of that. What Law Pavilion is doing is, they digitize, court cases, documents from appeals court and things like that. But what I'm talking about here is the forms, the paper that you use internally in your law firm. How can you take advantage of, because that is data in itself. That is data in itself. So if effective use of data, you can digitize that data that you have, even though it's in a Word document or it's in a paper form, right? You can digitize it and then store it in your database and be able to, draw some insight from that. Then another thing, I think this one is very important, which is commodity pricing. So to give you a perfect example, there are some tools here like, Avo, LegalZoom, right? Well, let me give you a perfect example. There's a tool here called a TurboTax. TurboTax is an accounting software, and I can use it without going to an accountant. In the past, before TurboTax, I will have to go to an accountant and then pay the accountant, and he or she will perform my tax return for me, and that's about it. But now we have TurboTax. The accountant is using TurboTax as well. So I, as a client, I don't need the accountant any longer, right? So I can just subscribe to TurboTax and then do my taxes myself. And there are other tools like that in the law spaces. I'm not saying all law cases are going to be using tools like this where clients, or most time when I say client, I'm talking about organizational clients. So let's say you are a law firm, your client is Mobil or Chevron, right? So so these tools, right, will lead to a situation where the regular client or your organization or your corporate client may not need much of your service, except if it's a big case, and that's when they will need you. So what that means is that revenue will be going down for lawyers as these tools will start to come up. So you can see Law Pavilion now. A lot of other tools will be coming that will make the work a lot easier for people to perform. So go to the, okay, you can leave it here. So, and that introduced something called a commodity pricing, right? So what that means is that law firms won't represent a unique advantage in providing the service over each other, or unique advantage over peer professionals or over software services. So this commoditization will certainly lead to further erosion of price, of legal services. But that does not mean that it's going to go down. So one area that this commodity pricing is going to affect is billable hour. So one of the ways to avoid that, right, is using a fixed fee legal work. So an example of that is, let's say, and some of you might probably be using that now. Let's say I want to file for my citizenship, right? And I go to a lawyer in the US and I say, okay, I want to file for my citizenship. The lawyer says, okay, I'm not going to bill you by the hour, right? But I'm going to give you a fixed fee legal fee. legal work. This is how much it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you $2,000. It's going to cost you $3,000, right? But even with a fixed fee legal work, right? There's also a disadvantage to that. If you don't have the data to price very well, if you don't price very well, you're leaving money under the table, right? But if you price very well, then you're making profit. So let's go to the next slide. We're running out of time. But Ali is going to distribute the slides so you can use the slide later. So let's go to the next slide, please. So, so this one is managing your law firm better with data. So this is a research study that was done by Legal Trends Report. They found out that a lot of lawyers spend 81% of their time. 81% of their time, that is astounding, on non-billable time. So now you now break, the 81% into two. 48% have to do with administrative tasks. Then you break that down further, 16% have to do with office administration, 15% generating and sending bills, configuring technology and collections, 6%. So when I say collections, I mean that when you bill people, right, and they didn't pay you, so now you have to now spend time trying to collect that money. You might even have to spend money, hiring collection agencies, to get that money back from these people. And then 3% of that time, of the non-billable time, is spent on business development. And all of this have to do with the fact that, law firms are not using data efficiently. They're not using processes efficiently. They're not using tools efficiently. So there are a lot of tools out there today that can actually do the work faster for you than, trying to spend a lot of time, waste a lot of time on administrative tasks, So let's go to the next slide, please. So now, this one, managing your law firm better with data. So without data, you can get policy generation. So look at this. Without data, right, 54% of law firms advertise to acquire new clients. 91% of these firms cannot calculate return on investment. They cannot calculate the return on investment on the advertising. That the 51%, they do advertising, right? And they don't know whether the advertising is bringing money or not. Then further, 94% of the 54% don't know the cost of acquisition. That's a problem. So if you can't measure your return on investment on your advertisement, then you're just, wasting money. But with data, you can actually do data-driven marketing and competitive data-informed pricing, which can help you to create new work. I talked about leaving money on the table, right? So there's something called utilization, which is the number of hours worked. And then realization, the number of hours a firm can actually bill to the client. So, and this is a problem where without data, right, or without efficient tools and systems, which the other presenters are going to be talking about later today, utilization, you work 20 hours, you work 40 hours, but you're actually realizing maybe 30 hours or maybe 32 hours. So you are not billing right. So without data, you are not billing right. But with data, you'll be able to bill right. So you are not wasting money. And that also boils down to decreasing profitability. You're not making profits. You're losing money. But with data, you can increase your profitability, by working more efficiently. You put tools, to use and finishing work faster. Next slide, please. I think we should be done in a little bit. So this is management of legal data. I'm going to run through this quickly, and Ali is going to share this with you, with all of you. So go to the next slide, please. So when we talk about, next slide, please, management of legal data, first of all, you need to have a data management plan. And the data management plan, consists of all these 8 characteristics. You have to be able to plan. So before you say, okay, I want to get into implementing data strategy, in my organization, you want to be able to plan, and part of that planning includes, what are you going to be doing with data? That includes your governance, that includes your data ethics, so you have to be able to plan all those things. What are you going to be creating? You address that in the planning, then collect. And collect is also a part of the planning, what are the protocols for collecting data? You have to be able to address that. What data are you going to collect, and how are you going to collect that data? The data quality, you need to make sure that you address, how are you going to make sure that your data is of good quality? Because poor quality data will slow down analytical work. And then the other one is, you have to be able to describe the data. Now, when I'm talking about describing the data, you're talking about the file names the data is going to have, what kind of format is they going to have, what kind of fields will the data have, and the meaning of codes and unique terms in your data. All those need to be addressed, because you understand that descriptions are in data. Being able to describe your data become more important, as organizations combine data from different sources. So if you start combining data from different sources, where, for example, maybe 2 sources data is coming from 2 sources, but they don't have identical fields, then that will create a worthless data set. And you have to be able to preserve the data. You store the data, you define what your retention policies will be, and then you look at also discovery. Discovery, this is where the value actually comes in for law firms. This is where the value comes in for law firms. When you're talking about discovery, it is the core of data mining. But many organizations, they treat data mining as the goal. But data mining is not the goal. Rather, it is the means to the goal. At the end of the day, you want to be able to extract insight. Data mining is just the process. You have to be able to extract insight from that process. So in the discovery phase, you want to define what you want to uncover. In the beginning, you want to define what that will be. So, for example, one organization may want to focus on process improvement and structure its data mining on that, on the data that will give it granular information needed to improve that process. Another organization may want to discover negotiating patterns for critical contracts. So before you start the data mining process, you need to know exactly what is it that you want to achieve. You need to have an objective of what you want to achieve, right? And then another one is integrate. So by integrating, meaning that bringing data from different sources to gain richer insights. So for example, as a law firm, you have detailed data from employment lawsuits that you have handled, but you want to gain richer insight from that. You may want to combine that with government data about employment lawsuits, and that will yield richer data. So basically, integration is bringing data from different sources, bringing them together to gain richer insight. And then the analysis part of it is just being able to have software, to do the work you want to do. So a lot of legal firms that have software, maybe tools, they focus on numerical data analysis. For example, like tracking time and hour management, as opposed to using advanced analytic techniques, right, to extract insight from, the documents that they have, the text and the images that they have. So next slide, please. So I'm going to just run through this. When I talk about legal mining, it encompasses all the things I've talked about. So for where I work, let's see if I can do this in 1 minute. Where I work now, I mentioned that for people who may just be coming. We have part of the stuff is we score patents. So we have a document, a patent, we can score the patent and give it a score and say, okay, this is the patent quality. Then the innovation inside the patent, we also score that. And on a daily basis, we score about hundreds of thousands of assets daily. And this is using advanced analytics, AI. So when our analysts, our attorneys are using, they are doing research or they are doing business development, they are using this tool that is analytics heavy. This is a proprietary tool that is analytics heavy. And they are combining similarities in one document against another document. So if you look at, for example, you're trying to, you're handling a case for a client, and then you say, okay, you want to know which cases are similar to mine. So you go to a place like, Ali, please remind me again, what's the name of this website you just mentioned? Law Pavilion, right? So you go to Law Pavilion and then you have to be doing this one after the one after the other, one after the. That's what I mentioned earlier about wasting a lot of time, 48% of your time on administrative tasks. So you want to, you have a case, then you, worst case is you go and pick up file cabinets, start flipping through, right? To see which cases are similar. You're just wasting a lot of time. Today, analytics can do that for you. So first of all, if you have hard copy, like real paper, you know, in file cabinet, you can digitize all those paper and put them into your database, and then you extract metadata, you know, from the data, and then you perform some analytics on that data. So if a case comes, right, you just upload a document for the case, and then you click run or compare. It will look through the thousands of cases you have and be able to recommend to you, these are top cases that are similar to these cases. And then it can even tell you how the judges, you know, judge on that case. So that cuts significant amount of your work trying to do that. So when I'm just giving you one application of legal data mining, you know, it's serious. So imagine if you're in the courtroom and then your opponent just argued a case and said, just make the case or give a counter argument, right? And you are lost for words, you don't know what to do. Your iPad is there with you, boom, boom, you can just type as your opponent is making the argument, you're going through your iPad, and then you're extracting what he is saying and look at, based on what he said, who rule in favor of that, who rule against it. Right there in courtroom. I'm not even talking about now open law pavilion document. I'm talking about documents within your law firm, the thousands of files, documents you have in your law firm on your iPad with some statistical analysis, AI being done. You can search within your iPad and respond to your opponent right away from there. So let's go to the next one. So almost done. So let's go to the application of legal analytics. So these are just some where analytics, some not exhaustive, but these are some areas where analytics is being used. You know, research analytics, document automation analytics, billing practice management analytics. So you have the list there. You know, contract analytics. You can use analytics heavily. I was talking about natural language processing, artificial intelligence, advanced analytics. You can use that in contract analytics heavily. You know, I talked about patent analytics. E-discovery is just about legal data mining that I spoke about earlier. Next slide, please. So Ali will share this with you, and then you can, you have it. Next slide, Ali. So I think that's about it. So before I take your questions, Ali, can you please pull up the second poll? So they should be finishing soon. So I think in the next 30 seconds. And then you can pull up the third one. Yeah, so Ali, I think they should be done by now. So let's put the last one. All right, so that's about it. Thank you very much. So, I mean, we do provide advanced analytics, you know, from data automation to, you know, giving you implementing digital transformation in law firms. So if you like to reach me, this is the email address of our business development manager. Feel free to reach us on that email address, and the phone number is there. So if you like to call, you can call via the email address. So thank you very much for joining. So I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you, Theo.
You're welcome.
So we have a few questions here that came in during the course of your session. And I'll just start from the first one here. From Popola Ololade. She's asking, how does analytics differ from Clockify when calculating time spent on a case to decide on cost implications? Can both be integrated? So Clockify is a time tracker, an online time tracking application that tracks the work that's going on in particular department in the firm. So it can be used by both lawyers and support staff in the firm. And it provides daily, weekly, and monthly insights into where employees are spending most of their time. So they're asking if analytics here can be integrated into Clockify.
Analytics can be integrated. So thank you, Ali, for explaining that to me. So like you said, Clockify already provide insight, right, into where employees are spending most of their time, right? So that's what I mentioned earlier about descriptive analytics. It's just telling you what happened, you know, what did they do and things like that. So if you want to take that further, right, you know, you mentioned about, you know, to decide on cost implications, right? So with that data, that means you have data now, right? If you're using Clockify, then you can now take that data and take it a step further and try to look at, you know, historical behavior on, you know, how the time management is being done, and then be able to inject analytics there, predictive analytics, and trying to say, okay, what will my cost, what will the usage be next month? So what you have in Clockify now is what happened yesterday, what happened 2 weeks ago, what happened 6 months ago. But with predictive analytics, to be precise, you can get that data and try to predict what will happen next month, what will happen 6 months from now. And if you're able to predict that, then you will know what the cost implications will be.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think the next question, I'll go on to the next question now. It's from Alan. Alan's asking, data analytics rides on the availability of data with the peculiarity of Nigeria where access to data is difficult. How do we navigate this issue in implementing this solution?
Okay, fantastic. Now, this is from Alan, right?
Alan Ohuyon.
Okay. Yeah, so the thing is that you currently have data now. You have a lot of data, and you probably don't even know that you have the data. So I mentioned earlier, I mean, so Ali, if I will ask you for example, in the law firms that you worked at, worked in, or where you worked, like, can you give me an estimate of the files you have in cabinets or in drawers?
Okay, in terms of the format or the form in which some of this data is stored, it's, I would say, between 20 to 50% paper-based, and this across the firms now. And in some other firms, they've done pretty well, so you find only maybe 30% paper-based data. So it's largely unstructured, but it's a blend.
Yeah. So now, if you look at that, that could be, you know, hundreds of thousands of files, you know, sitting in drawers and file cabinets, right? So that is data. That is money. That is asset for any law firm that has that. So you get that unstructured data, you digitize it, which is part of the thing that we do. You know, you digitize that data and store in a database. Now, when you're not storing the database, now you have digital format of that data, right? Then now you can extract metadata from that digital format and then start performing analytics on, you extract the content in each document and then be able to perform advanced analytics on that data. So that is that, even with the data that you have. Secondly, so let's say I mentioned stuff about, you know, not losing money when you're doing your campaign, trying to acquire clients. So being able to just ask questions like, you know, how did you hear about us? You know, who refer you to us? You know, just little things like that. You start gathering those things. You can use that for digital marketing campaign. You know, asking questions, you know, about, you know, when they're filling your forms, right? When a client comes to you, if a client will fill a profile form, you can use that as an opportunity to collect some just little information about the client. And that can help guide where most of your clients are coming from. And that in itself is data. So yeah, I'll leave it as that, you know. So you have data, especially you lawyers, you guys generate a lot of data, whether you are writing, whether it's your comment on a case, decision on a case, who worked on which case. That's enormous amount of data. So you should take advantage of that.
As a follow-up to that, Theo, when it comes to metadata, can you give an example of what that means specifically?
Yeah, metadata is just something that you use to describe the data. So for example, let's say you have profile data, right? You say, you know, name, you say full name, you say address, and things like that. You know, it's just something that describes your data, like the fields in your data set.
Okay, this leads me to, and there's another question, but before I ask that, I would like you to explain briefly, in terms of digitizing the data, transforming paper-based data into digital formats. Would you advise that law firms engage in services of firms that probably scan? When you say you scan the data, you scan, for example, the entire content of the file. How, like that kind of limits the ability to extract specific data from that Am I right to say that? Is there a way to actually get the real information or the metadata from such formats when you scan and store?
Yeah, when you scan and store, right? Yeah, the scanner is one step, right? Basically just digitizing the data, the unstructured data, put it in the database, right? In some tools, right, in the process of scanning, right, before it gets stored in your computer, another process can grab that and extract the content from even not just the text, now the images within, the file. Yeah, so there are tools that actually there are free tools that you can use to do that. I think there's a tool, I can't remember the name here. It's a free tool from Stanford. I will share with you, and then you can share with your
Okay.
attendees. Yeah, there are tools that you can use to extract the content of the data. So we do that a lot in our company now. When we digitize, we store the data, and then we extract the content of the data. So I'll give you a perfect example. I did a project for a big organization. Their law department, they were trying to digitize their law documents. So they call them restricted funds, money that some donors have given, right? All those things were stored in hard copy, I mean, like in file cabinets. So they weren't able to extract insights from the file cabinets, So what we did was we digitized the data, we scanned the data, the paper into this thing, and then we created a database. And we were able to extract the content of the digitized data to be able to perform some analysis.
Okay. Thank you. I'll quickly move on to the next question here. As regards analytics, how do you manage a situation where relationship management and competitive market rates forces the business owners to disregard guidance from analytics?
Yeah, that is more like a compliance issue, right? So you can use, I think in the slide, I provided an example of something similar to that. You can use analytics to determine whether someone is going to be ignoring, what do you call it? The policies. Someone is going to comply to your policy. So that is an area of a compliance analytics, right? So you can study the behavior before you can even do this, right? It's not like, oh, you need to have data to do that, right? So for you to do that, you're collecting data on how employees are doing this, the decisions that were arrived at, right? So you need to have some historical data, right? And then when you mine that data, it's not just being reactive in a way. You want to be proactive, right? So when you have that data, you can study what is going on. How this particular people have been, not complying with the business policies. And then with that data, you can then use that to determine what may happen or a likely action that employee or another employee may take in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
So another quick example of that is, let's say you have let's say you have a employee who is lenient. Just his or her behavior is just he or she is just a lenient person, right? So, but you have policies that he should adhere to, but because of his nature, he's not adhering to those policies, right? Because of his lenient nature, right, it's costing the law firm money. So you can use analytics to prevent that.
Great. Good. Thank you so much, sir. It's been really insightful, very insightful actually. And everybody's going to get you're all going to get the slides as well as other resources mentioned. Oluwatobi Afolabi mentioned that the solution you mentioned, the tool you mentioned is an optical character recognition software.
Yeah, optical character recognition, OCR, is a technology, right? It's in itself is not a tool, right? It's a technology that a lot of big firms or other companies provide, right? So they use that technology to develop their tool. So and it's not just for scanning alone. Now, when you scan, right, it extracts, the content, the text, the images from the document. So OCR is not a tool, but it's a technology, that is being implemented in a tool.
Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you very much, sir. It's been very rewarding listening to you. As always, I've listened to you speak one-on-one, and it's always it's similar to that. Only we are virtual now, so it's been an honor, sir, having you on. Thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure, and thank you guys for coming.